Hi Year 7. Our next topic is about time, and we're learning about having to convert time units. And yes, I will be checking to see whether you can read an analog clock. For those of you who can't, you might have to start practicing. But I want to first start off saying that the basic unit for time is the second. Okay, we start off with the second and we move forward from there. So of course we know that 60 seconds is 1 minute, 60 minutes is 1 hour, 24 hours in 1 day, 7 days is 1 week, and 12 months is 1 year. We know those sorts of things. And here is our conversion table here. If you weren't sure how to convert, the general rule is always, if you're going from a smaller unit to a larger unit, you're going to divide by the conversion. If you're going from a larger unit like days to a smaller unit like hours, you're going to times by the conversion unit. Okay, so for any times less than a second, these are the ones we use here. The next smallest unit from a second is called a millisecond. Now there are 1,000 milliseconds in a second. Okay, so it's quite a short bit of time. We can even go smaller than that and talk about microseconds. And a microsecond, well, there are 1 million microseconds in 1 second. And finally, well, we can go smaller, but we'll stop at nanoseconds. A nanosecond, there is 1 billion nanoseconds in 1 second. So it is a very, very short length of time. And the last thing I want to talk about is whether something is AM or PM, which you should know. So AM describes something that is before noon, and PM describes something which is after noon or after midday. Alright, so here goes a couple of questions. So let's see how we go with these questions. You can copy these answers into your worksheet. Okay. Convert these times to units in the shown in the brackets. Well, 3 days into minutes. So I'm going to start off with 3 days. Now, we've got to go from days to minutes. So all we're doing is taking the 3 days and timesing it by 24 to get into hours, then timesing it by 60 to get into minutes. So it's going to be 3 times 24 times 60 to get our answer. So if we bring our calculator in, 3 times 24 times 60 equals 4,320 minutes. Second question, 3 months. How many years is 3 months? Okay, so we look at months. Well, we don't have months on here, do we? Okay, we don't have years, so we're not going to be able to use these, but if we can convert, we would do like this. We know, of course, there are 12 months in 1 year. So we're going to do 30 divided by 12. Now we know that's not going to be a whole number. It's going to have some sort of fraction. So we're going to do 30 divided by 12 equals 5 over 2. Now if I do my shift button and the SD button, it will give me the answer of 2.5, which means that 30 months is 2.5 years. So the second example is about 24-hour time, and I'm not sure how many people know about 24-hour time in the class, but we'll go through it now very quickly. So in 24-hour time, if I started off, let's say I started off at 1 AM. Here's 1 AM. Put my pen on. There we are. There's 1 AM there. That would be 2 AM, 3 AM, 4 AM, 5 AM, all the way up to midday. Okay, so remember they were all the AMs. Now, in 24-hour time, well, in normal time, we would just continue around the circle again, but we would call it PM. In 24-hour time, we just keep going from 12 and jump to 13. So 1 PM in the afternoon would be 1300 hours. 2 PM in the afternoon would be 1400 hours. 3 PM in the afternoon would be 1500 hours, and so on until we got around to midnight would be 2400 hours. Okay, so just remember, all the PMs, if you look at the pattern, we've got 1 13, 2 14, 3 15, 4 16. The pattern is, all we're going to do is going to add 12 to each of the AMs times to get the PM times. Or if we had a 24-hour time like 1530, to convert it back to PM time, all I'm going to do is I'm going to minus 1200 hours from that to get 3:30 PM. Okay, it's not that hard to work out. Now let's look at these examples. It says write these times using the system given in the brackets. Okay, so we want to convert 4:30 PM into 24-hour time. So I'm going to take the 4:30, I'm going to write it as 0430, and I'll talk about the 0 in a minute, and we're going to add 1200 to it. And that will give me an answer of 1630 hours. And that's how we call it, 1630 hours or 1630 hours. Alright, now here we've got 1945 hours, and we want to convert it into AM or PM. Now, because it's 1945, we know it's going to be PM. Okay, we know it's going to be PM because it's after 12. So if I subtract 1200 from that, it's going to end up being 7:45, and we know it's PM, so we're going to write PM. Now, one more thing I was going to mention about the 0 here. When we quote in 24-hour time something in the AM and it's a single digit, we write it as we put a 0 in front of the number. Okay, so what you need to remember is anything in 24-hour time is written with 4 numbers. So if the question was, or the time was 1 AM, and we wanted to write it in 24-hour time, we would write 0100 hours. If it was 6 AM, we would write it as 6 AM. We would write it as 0600 hours. But what happens when we get to 10? Well, 10 AM, 10 AM already has the 4 numbers, so you just have to write them out like this. You don't need to put a 0 at the front. Only for the single digits you need to put a 0 at the front. Just something you need to remember.